Welcome to the Pitcher Nail Down. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Nick Tasso at the Inefficient 2. Taking a look at the Monday slate, looking at pitchers on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Obviously some top options, but there seems to be quite a bit of value on the slate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite slates that I've seen in a long while for pitching, so I'm excited to talk about this one.
Yeah, definitely. And jumping into this first game here, taking a look at the Rays and Blue Jays in the Rogers Center. R.A. Dickey facing Jake Odorizzi. Blue Jays minus 140 favorites here, and Jake Odorizzi obviously in the midst of kind of a really strong stretch. But I do worry about him a little bit on the road just because that's where he does struggle, especially kind of giving up the long ball in his career. But he has pitched well against Toronto 3 times this season. I mean, he's only allowed 4 earned over 3 starts, decent strikeout rate, averaging about a strikeout per inning against him. But he's at a price tag where I just kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable using him.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at his price on both sides, and it's a little bit too high for any guy going against Toronto. So to me, it's kind of an easy fade. He could have a pretty solid outing. Like you just stated, his matchups against them this year have been pretty good, but it is the Rogers Center, and seeing a guy for a 4th time kind of really can do wonders for an offense.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the Blue Jays offense right now, I mean, over the last 2 weeks, 27th in WOBA, they strike out a 27% rate in that span. So, I mean, Odorizzi could catch him at a good time. I mean, I'm not against it in GPPs, but it's obviously kind of a high risk, high reward situation because we have seen Odorizzi really have a low floor this year at times.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wouldn't play him in cash for that reason too, and just because his price is too out there. But you'll get him at a low ownership, and again, that price tag's probably going to shy people away from him too. So I don't mind him in GPPs. He's shown that he can pitch against Toronto, and like you said, they haven't done much lately. So this might be the game, but it might not be.
Yeah, definitely. And on the other side, I mean, R.A. Dickey's a guy who it just seems like about once every 7 starts he has a good one, and I think he just used his last one against Houston. So I'm looking for him to struggle again. I mean, the Rays have a decent track record against Dickey, and Dickey's a guy who just gives up way too much base runners for me to even consider.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at Dickey, and he's just kind of up in the air. You just got to throw a coin into a well or something like that with him, but it's just, to me, it's not going to happen in this matchup. Overall, knuckleball pitchers pretty much get hit a little bit harder against righties, and that's exactly what Tampa has on their lineup. In their lineup, it's just so many righties. So I think there's a lot of red flags for me for Dickey here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not quite sure. I mean, Vegas kind of is odd with this one. I mean, Toronto has a run total near 5. They're also 140 favorites. I'm not going really quite against that. I think it's just kind of a little bit of a red flag as we've been kind of talking about this game.
Yeah, I think this one is one of those matches where it could really go either way. So for pitching wise, cash games, I'm staying away. GPPs, I could use Odorizzi.
Yeah, definitely. Giants and Marlins next here. You get the Marlins who are minus 145 favorites at home. This one, a definite pitching duel here. Jose Fernandez versus Johnny Cueto. And obviously for Jose Fernandez, I mean, is your most expensive pitcher on the slate, and that's, mainly due to his electric strikeout rate, 36% so far this season. Giants don't strike out a ton, but obviously given that the Fernandez, at home, it kind of evens things out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, it's extremely high on DraftKings. I think his price is a little bit better on FanDuel, more manageable. You can do a lot of things with it, but I don't know. For me, I think he'll have a good outing. Hasn't been the same Fernandez as he had earlier in the season. Last few starts have been iffy. Still good and still giving you positive points on both sides, but I don't know. For me, that price tag just kind of sets it too far out of grasp for me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look at his last 2 starts. I mean, the strikeout rate's still been there. I mean, 17 over the last 2, but hasn't picked up the win in each and did allow 8 earned. And when you're paying something of that price tag, you definitely don't want to be in the teens, with your pitcher there. So for me, I mean, he's a guy who's always kind of borderline cash, just even in bad matchups, just because of that strikeout rate. But I think given the fact that he kind of does need a win as well to pay that off, it just kind of makes both these guys GPP guys. And I'm kind of just looking to actually pay down the pitcher tonight just because there are a lot of value guys.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll get Fernandez. For me, especially on DraftKings, if you get a guy anywhere over 11.5 or even 12, I feel like you need to get upper 20s or 30 points on DraftKings. And even if you got those 2 wins the last 2 starts, he'd still only be in the low 20s. So I think right now his price is just a little bit too high for me.
Yeah, and the same thing kind of goes with Cueto. I mean, he's only 400 less on DraftKings. I mean, obviously FanDuel it's a little bit better, but still, I mean, he's only 200 less than Fernandez. He's obviously going to be the lower owned guy on this slate, if any ace. You know, he's probably going to be lowest owned out of all the aces. So I don't mind him in GPPs. Obviously, the Marlins offense is somewhat middle of the road. Just kind of the downside, but I could see kind of using Cueto in a tournament format. But obviously, it's kind of just a deep GPP option.
Yeah, absolutely. For cash game, obviously, it makes no sense. Just pay up if you're going to pay for a starting pitcher on this slate. You'd pay for Fernandez, but GPPs, yeah, I don't mind it. Red flag for me is just he's been extremely inconsistent since the All-Star break. He has one good start, one bad one, and it's just fluctuating. And his last one was good, so who knows? This one probably will be bad.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with that. I mean, we kind of were expecting a little bit of consistency with Cueto, and that really hasn't been there, and especially in some good spots. I mean, you go back to earlier in June against the Phillies, he struggled against the Padres, struggled, did well against the Yankees. He's kind of been all over the place, even in good matchups, and this one kind of just more of an average one. It's not spectacular.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of want more of a sure thing when you're paying that price for him. So to me, it's kind of an easy fade in cash. Could consider it though in GPPs.
Yeah, definitely. Braves and Brewers next year. Zach Davies, I mean, obviously, I think people are going to be intrigued with him, but for me, I'm staying away, even against this Atlanta offense. I know they're not good against right-handers, but there really is a ton of lefties. They've been hitting pretty well lately. They really haven't been that bad offensive team. I mean, you go over the last 2 weeks, they ranked 7th in WOBA, so it's not, you can't just really throw average right-handed arms in there anymore. And Davies does struggle with lefties, so given that it's a friendly ballpark there in Miller, I'm just kind of fading this game altogether as far as pitching goes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's in Miller Park. Maybe if this was in Atlanta, I think things would be a little bit different. You could take a little bit more chances, but this being Miller Park, Davies to me, he's overpriced for what he might do. And this Atlanta offense hasn't been that bad. And those lefties could kind of get to him. And then on the flip side, Whalen, he's only had one start, so I'm not really expecting much from him, even with this Milwaukee team that doesn't have too much power or pop as it once did.
Yeah, definitely. And the Brewers are obviously coming back off of a kind of road trip that, they actually hit pretty well. I mean, the top half of that lineup was doing pretty well without Lucroy, since he's been gone. There's still obviously some talented bats out there that we have to work around, but Whalen doesn't really have enough stuff for me to even consider.
No, absolutely. They brought Arkia up or whatever his name is, and he got his first hit the other night. And did you see that with Segura? Yeah, he threw the ball. I guess he didn't call timeout. He threw the ball in and it turned into an error. He was trying to give him the ball for his first career hit, and it turned into an error. So that's the Diamondbacks for you.
So okay, so he singled and then went to second on the air because he threw it in.
Yeah, well, I just saw it on the thing. I think it might have been a double, but yeah, he threw it in and he was able to get an extra base. No good deed goes unpunished. That's exactly what my motto is in life.
Yeah, I mean, and as you said, I mean, that kind of does sum up the Diamondbacks there.
Yeah, he forgot to call timeout or it wasn't granted, and there you go.
Astros and Twins next one here. You got Tyler Duffy versus Colin McHugh. Twins offense has been quite the threat here of late, and I'm definitely approaching with some caution. But I do sort of like McHugh as a GPP guy just because he does have some upside for the price. But he's also extremely volatile, just given his upside and his floor. But I don't mind it. I mean, the Twins still strike out at a decent rate. But obviously there are a lot of power bats that McHugh will have to worry about. But definitely GPP arm to consider, but definitely high risk.
No, absolutely. And I think on FanDuel, he's way overpriced, but on DraftKings, as for the SP2 and GPPs, I really don't mind him. You save a lot of salary, and he has been good as of late, except for that one start in Detroit. So I think there's a lot of upside here. It's just this Minnesota offense has been red hot the last few weeks, but I think they're going to come back down to earth at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And you look at McHugh, I mean, on the slate, fifth in strikeout percentage. I mean, he's right around Gausman and Cueto and Odorizzi. So I definitely think he's worth a look. But, I mean, kind of as we've seen over his last handful of starts, he's all over the play. But obviously, if you want to take down a GPP, as you mentioned, FanDuel, I mean, I don't mind the price, but obviously it is a little bit over. I think more so on DraftKings is where you're looking because he's only 6K.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's still manageable on FanDuel, don't get me wrong. It's just when you can get some guy at his caliber of play lately at only 6,000, it kind of really helps you out a lot more. And like you said, strikeout wise, out of 2 out of his last 4 starts, he's had double digits in strikeouts. So there is a lot of upside here.
Yeah, definitely. He's a small favorite, and I do expect some run support. Definitely not really looking to use Tyler Duffy against this Houston offense. And I know the Houston offense is boomer bust, but Duffy just not really capable of getting through this entire lineup.
No, absolutely. I mean, you look at Duffy, and he had spurts last year, and then even when he came up for a little bit, he was good, and then he got injured, and it's just been terrible lately for Tyler Duffy. So there's no price tag that I would ever play him on right now.
Yeah, definitely. And Reds and Cardinals next year, Michael Walker versus Cody Reed. Cardinals minus 185 favorites there at home. Cody Reed, not really a guy that I'm looking to use. I know the Cardinals offense against lefties really hasn't been that great this year, but Reed just allows a ton of pop to right-handed bats, and there are some guys in that order that do lefties well. So Reed, I know he's cheap, but I'm just kind of staying away.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There's really not much to like about him. I mean, he does have those good starts every once in a while, but still young. He's a lefty who can kind of surprise some people. But against the Cardinals, I think they have enough righties in there who could do some damage. And this game is, even though it's in St. Louis, I still think they should be able to score a good amount of runs off of them.
Yeah, definitely. And Michael Walker on the other side, I mean, I'm really looking to only use him on DraftKings just because, for me, he's an SP2 worthy of a look just because this Reds offense starting to kind of trend back down after that hot start after the All-Star break. But without Jay Bruce, it's a pretty weak lineup. Walker's not going to give you anything special, and I don't really consider him in GPPs just because there isn't a ton of upside. But I guess at that price, I mean, 15 to 20 wouldn't be bad from him.
Yeah, absolutely. Walker's been pretty disappointing this year. Expectations were pretty high for him, and he's just kind of been a mediocre pitcher. I mean, you could do a lot worse. So I don't mind him in this matchup here. Decent amount of righties, too, in this Cincinnati offense. So 6,500, you might as well take a GPP shot with him. And he's even kind of borderline on cash because he's going to get you those mid-teens most likely.
Yeah, that's what I see out of him, and I think if you didn't want to pair him up with a high price pitcher, I wouldn't mind it, just because Fernandez can give you that upside, while Walker can kind of give you a little bit of stability facing a pretty weak offense.
Yeah, absolutely, I definitely agree there. I mean, you put him in with Fernandez, and right there, it's still under 20K, so that still gives you a good amount to make the rest of your lineup.
Yeah, definitely. And we got our Coors game here, Rangers and Rockies, Cole Hamels versus Tyler Anderson. And Hamels obviously priced down from what his usual, salary tag is. And Hamels, I kind of want to talk about him as a GPP option just because the Rockies really aren't that strong against lefties. And obviously there's a lot of risk being in Coors, but we've seen this Rockies offense be tamed at times. I don't know. It's obviously a high risk, high reward situation. I'm kind of considering it for the price tag.
Yeah, I can kind of see why you would. For me, I always view Cole Hamels as a guy who just gives up too many home runs, even in neutral parks. And this being in Colorado, I think he could give up a lot of home runs. But like you said, there's not too many tough righties in that lineup other than Arenado and then Rayburn Reynolds. But I don't know. It's just, to me, I probably wouldn't chase that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Rockies. I mean, obviously there is some potential there, as you mentioned, those right-handed bats, but also some strikeout upside. I mean, 23.5% strikeout rate against left-handers this season, and obviously the home and away splits, I mean, are insane because just the Rockies thrive in that core is there. But obviously, I mean, the floor is very low just because it is it's in Coors. But I think there could be some potential, and obviously it's extremely high risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same with Tyler Anderson too on the flip side. I mean, looking at his game logs at Colorado this year, he's actually been pretty good, and he's given you decent fantasy value in DFS. So, I mean, typically I wouldn't mind playing him, but there's a lot of righties in this Texas offense that I probably would not play him for. But at the same time, he's looked pretty good at Coors Field, which is weird to say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm in agreement with you. I mean, I think not in this matchup, but definitely going forward, he's a guy who I've definitely been considering and using him in the past. I mean, he did well against Atlanta at home, obviously Philly at home. I mean, he's dominated some teams there in cores. And the thing is, he doesn't give up a ton of homers. I mean, just 3 at home in 43 innings. So it's definitely a nice kind of guy to note going forward.
Yeah, it's really weird. I never really looked into it that deeply until now, and it just was pretty alarming to me.
Yeah, definitely. But obviously, I think this
Not
just
here.
not here. Yeah. Orioles
Future.
and A's. Next one here, Kevin Gossman versus Kendall Graven. And you got the A's here. I mean, obviously, there's a couple bats that Gossman would need to worry about. But overall, I like Gossman quite a bit just because he sits at a pretty decent price tag, pitching in a really friendly ballpark out there in Oakland. And he's also a heavy favorite there. So I'm a big fan of Baltimore and really Kevin Gossman here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I was off the Gossman train a couple starts ago, and I think I'm back on it. I mean, he has a really nice matchup against Oakland. Should get the win because Graveman isn't too good. There's no Josh Reddick, even though he's not that good either. But there's a lot of strikeout potential, even though the A's don't strike out enough. And I think if you could just keep the ball in the park, and that's kind of an easy thing to do in the Coliseum, I think he should have a nice little outing here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 8,500 is definitely a reasonable price tag on DraftKings. 83 on FanDuel. I mean, those are two prices that just a good mid-range price guy, and you expect kind of a nice quality starting to win out of.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're going up against Kendall Graveman, there's always a good chance for a win. I know Graveman can have his nice starts here and there, but I really don't see this one being one of those starts, especially after the day that Baltimore had yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's a little bit matchup dependent, and obviously going up against Baltimore, one of the tougher offenses in the league, you do expect some run support there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are going to overestimate the Orioles offense on Monday, but I think they're still going to be pretty solid, score probably 5 runs or so, just nothing like what they did yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. Tigers and Mariners, you got Michael Fulmer versus Hashi Wakuma. This game is basically a pick 'em out there in Safeco. Fulmer's a guy who I've liked quite a bit this year, but I think his price tag is still a little bit high in this matchup for me to use. And while I think he could have a fine start, it's just kind of a tougher matchup and something that I'm just kind of staying away from just given the
A little while ago, he looked really good, and lately he just isn't striking out as too many guys as he once did, and he's given up a few extra hits here or there, and he's been okay. It's just nothing too good when you're paying 8,900, 8,400 for him. You kind of would hope for something more, and I know the Seattle offense isn't that great, but I don't know. It's just one of those things. I'm kind of staying away.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, he might be kind of wearing down here. I mean, obviously he's a young right-handed arm, so it is possible that he's just kind of slowing down because he is racking up some innings. I mean, you got to look. I mean, he's up over 100 innings pitched, but still young for a guy with a little MLB experience, and that could be something to factor in going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. You look how some other teams handle their pitchers, like Toronto and Aaron Sanchez, and now they're going to 6-man. Like, they're being extremely cautious with him, and maybe that's something that Detroit needs to do. Maybe they need to realize that he's not doing the same as he was early in the season because he's fatigued. But who knows? But regardless, it's not my decision, and my decision is just to kind of stay away from him here.
Yeah, definitely. And on the other side, I mean, Hisashi Wakuma coming off a great start against Boston, but I'm not really looking to play him against this Tigers offense that's been red hot. I mean, top 5 in WOBA over the last 2 weeks. They've cut their strikeout rate down quite a bit in that span, too. I'm just not looking to use Wakuma. He just really hasn't shown enough for me on a consistent basis to really use him.
No, absolutely. And you look at him, I think that last start against Boston was kind of a fluke, and Wakuma gives up a home run a decent amount, so I'm kind of fading him here against a very Tigers offense, even though his 7,300 price on DraftKings is kind of appealing. I wouldn't mind him in GPPs, but it's definitely not something I'm going to have a ton of exposure with.
Yeah, definitely. Phillies and Dodgers last game at night here. Dodgers are big favorites, minus 200. And Julio Urias back up in the majors, making his start against Zach Eflin. And I think Urias, because it was McCarthy's schedule coming in, and now you get Urias at a pretty cheap price tag going up against one of the worst, offenses in baseball, especially against left-handers.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, he's not on the FanDuel roster, Urias. He's just on DraftKings, 6,800, and I think it's a decent price for him. This Phillies offense isn't too good, so we really get to thank Rich Hill's blister because that's why he couldn't go on Sunday, which made Brandon McCarthy go. So I think you could get him at a very good matchup here.
Yeah, and he's on FanDuel. He's 7K.
Well, I searched for him. I didn't find him, so maybe they were just being rude to me and wouldn't let me search for him.
Unclick the only show probable pitchers, and he'll pop up for you.
You know, I didn't think I had that on, but that actually makes a lot of sense because it was really confusing why he wasn't in there.
Yeah, no, I know, and it wouldn't surprise me just given the fact that there are sometimes guys in the player pools that don't show up at times.
And I feel like FanDuel does that a lot more than usual, that they make guys disappear.
Yeah, definitely.
Benintendi for the Sox, he's been in the player pool for like a month, and I don't even think FanDuel had him until like a week ago.
Yeah, no, they're definitely up and down on whether they add him in. But Urias is certainly in a good spot. I mean, Philly's 30th in WOBA against lefties, 23% strikeout rate. And when Urias has pitched, I mean, obviously he kind of figured things out over his last handful of starts. And obviously that big strikeout rate, 26.4%. He's never a guy who's going to go deep into games, but, you know, right around that 5, if you're lucky, 6 innings, he will kind of get some punch outs and hopefully come away with a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at him his last few starts, he was able to keep the ball in the ballpark a little bit better than he was in his first starts. So I kind of like him here. Again, Philly's offense, there every once in a while they'll finally wake up and do something. So I don't mind his price, 6,800 on DraftKings and apparently 7,000 on FanDuel. So I don't mind that as well.
And I mean, I don't think we need to kind of go into detail, but Zach Eflin not really in play. Obviously, he's had 1-2 good starts here. I mean, over the last couple against, I think it was Pittsburgh and Atlanta. But overall, he doesn't miss really any bats. I mean, 6% swinging strike rate, not really good against the Dodgers offense.
Yeah, I know the Dodgers isn't the best offense out there, but against Eflin, I think they should have their way with him. So, which even boosts up Urias a little bit more to win.
Yep, I definitely think Urias is going to probably pick up a W as long as he gets across that five inning mark.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's never a guarantee, though. You look at the Dodgers game on Saturday, and they almost pulled Strickland out after 4 innings for a pinch hitter. So you never know what's going on. Even though Mattingly's not there, I guess Dave Roberts still is kind of managing the same way.
He really is. I mean, Dave Roberts, he's made some real bonehead decisions. I mean, numerous times, I think so. Whatever it is, I mean, maybe you and I should go in and apply because we probably coach.
Well, to be honest with you, I'll never badmouth Dave Roberts no matter what he does. So
that's
I'm just
true.
staying out of that one.
He is a legend here. So that's true. Good point.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually watching on Netflix again the other day, the 30 for 30 about that, and it was just a very good moment for everyone in New England.
Yeah, definitely a fun time. So that's going to wrap it up here with the pitcher nail down. Be sure to check out DaveFantasyCafe.com for all great tools and content.